안녕하세요, 여러분. Hello, everyone. 환영합니다. Welcome. I am Alma Soongi Beck. I am one of the climate justice co-chairs of the Climate Reality Project Bay Area chapter. And I am so pleased that you joined us today for our inaugural 2025 Indigenous Voices program. I'm going to talk a little bit about Climate Reality Project Bay Area and about the climate justice team, and then I'm going to do a land acknowledgement, and then we'll introduce our moderator for tonight, Sarah Diefendorf. So the Climate Reality Project is a international organization, and our chapter is a chapter that consists of people that have been through the Climate Reality Project training, and the trainings take place all throughout the world. My training was in 2019 in Atlanta, and that's where we learned a lot about some of the background around climate, including climate justice issues facing BIPOC people and including Indigenous people throughout North America and around the world. The climate justice team, we are a branch of the Climate Reality Project Bay Area chapter. We center frontline BIPOC, standing for Black, Indigenous, other people of color, and marginalized communities across all chapter activities, teams, and events. And of our priorities, of our three top priorities, one has been Indigenous voices for the last 5 to 6 years that we've had a climate justice team. And for Indigenous voices, we seek to uplift Indigenous voices and increase the chapter's membership's understanding of and engagement on issues of Indigenous sovereignty and how these issues are essential in our struggle for long-term solutions to end the global climate crisis. If you are interested in being involved in the climate justice work or in the work of the Climate Reality Project chapter, you can find us on our website, climaterealitybayarea.org. And you can reach out to the climate justice team. There we have our own page. So that is the housekeeping for today. Now I'm going to do a land acknowledgement. And I live and work on Ramaytush Ohlone land, San Francisco and the San Francisco Peninsula. And the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone is the association, the nonprofit tribal organization of the Ramaytush Ohlone. And their particular angle on land acknowledgement is really how the land acknowledgements are actually not for them as the local Indigenous people, but actually for us as people who are visitors on this land. And so this particular land acknowledgement I developed with the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone and the chair of the tribe. So it starts off as follows. Indigenous people consist of less than 5% of the world population and yet protect 80% of global biodiversity, according to National Geographic. And in 2021, a pamphlet called Indigenous Resistance Against Carbon discussed how efforts to protect Indigenous sovereignty and treaty rights have kept billions of tons of carbon in the ground, equivalent to 1/4 the annual emissions from both the US and Canada combined. Clearly, the climate crisis would be much more severe were it not for the efforts of Indigenous peoples. And so from this perspective, I offer this acknowledgement of this land and the original peoples of these lands in the San Francisco and the Bay Area, the Ohlone bands of the Ramaytush, Karkin, Chochenyo, the Tamian Nation, the Coast Miwok, Bay Miwok, and Sierra Miwok, the Pomo, Patkin, Yokut, and Wapo. We are lucky in our chapter to have this robust Indigenous Voices project. And like I said before, please reach out to us if you're interested in getting involved. 감사합니다. And without further ado, let me introduce Sarah Diefendorf. So Sarah Diefendorf, I've had the pleasure of working very closely with Sarah over the last 5 years from the beginning of our Indigenous Voices project. Sarah, I'm going to let you introduce the work that you do at the Earth Institute and a little bit about you, and then you're going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. So thank you.
We've rebranded. We are the Capacity Collaborative now. And we work with Indigenous communities and disadvantaged communities across the United States. We work to build capacity. Currently, right now, I am located on Indigenous Hawaiian land in the community of Waianae and Nanakuli, Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. And we are here as part of a grant to support community engagement and empowerment, ideally for the next 3 years, if the Trump administration will allow us to be. Other than that, I just want to welcome everybody. I'm really happy to be here, but I'm not important. The important people are our two speakers, Jill Sherman-Warne and Jim Warne, and I'm going to give you a bio for both of them. They're super impressive bios. Jill Sherman-Warne has been my friend and colleague for over 15 years. That's probably the most important thing to me. But she is also an enrolled Hoopa tribal member and has served on her tribal council for a total of 4 years. She's the executive director of the Native American Environmental Protection Coalition, and she regularly works with 29 tribes throughout California, Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico. She has served as a member of the San Diego American Indian Health Clinic Board of Directors and on the UC San Diego Chancellor's Community Advisory Board, the State of California's Clean Vehicle Assistance Advisory Board, and the Technical Advisory Board for Mobile Renewable Power. So she's definitely got that knowledge down. And in 2022, she became the first Native American to receive an appointment to serve on the California Air Resources Board, Environmental Justice Advisory Committee. In 2023, she received a federal appointment to the Clean Air Advisory Committee. In her spare time, of which she has little, Jill enjoys traditional fishing and hunting and is a grandmother to 4 grandchildren who are receiving traditional stories that she grew up hearing. Okay. And before we move on to Jill, I'm going to introduce Jim. Jim is, other than being Jill's husband, is Oglala-Lakota and is an educator advocate and filmmaker. Jim earned a BS from Arizona State University and an MS from San Diego State University. He's created continuing education programs at SDSU Interwork Institute and is currently the Community Engagement Director at University of South Dakota Center for Disabilities, Oyate, I'm assuming, yeah, all right, Circles Sanford School of Medicine. He's president of Warrior Society Development. He consults for various government agencies and tribal nations, including as an affiliate with Arizona College of Medicine, Sonoran Circle of Indigenous Empowerment. He's also a motivational speaker, and his experience is huge and broad. It includes congressional testimonies, workforce access, film production. He's been an actor and a stuntman, professional football player, youth camps, organizational development, and higher education administration. His Gen 7 film productions produced Seventh Generation, which is an award-winning documentary, and his latest productions, Remember the Children and My Native America, are also award-winning films, which I know Jim will let you know how you can get access to those. So I think I will stop there, and I'm going to pass it off to Jill.
Jill Sherman-Warne. And I'm so happy to see everyone here tonight. I know that we are all busy people with busy schedules, and I think just being able to join says something about you personally as being connected and wanting to make a difference. I think all of us that are in this space are people who are passionate about making a difference and are concerned where our world is going. First, I want to talk about, the fact that Sarah introduced me as an enrolled member. I think sometimes we get confused between the race of Native Americans as a race, as a people, and people who are actually citizens of their governments. And so it's especially important right now in this space because of the work that Trump and the administration is doing to negate a lot of treaties, congressional acts, laws, a history of laws that are being disrupted. And I think it's if we don't talk about this is a very difficult topic, and there's a lot of myths around it, disinformation around being Native. So when you think about being Native, and maybe all of us, have taken a DNA test or an ancestry.com, or have grown interested in knowing where our roots are, who our tribal people were at one time, because we all come from tribal people at some level, right? But it's only us, like myself, my husband, who are enrolled citizens with their respective tribes, who actually can say we are tribal citizens. We are a part of our standing comes from our government to government relationship with our respective tribes. And so when we think of that, let's think of somebody who finds out that their ancestry is French. Great, they have French ancestry, but it doesn't make them a French citizen. So we need to probably move to a space, I'm thinking, of clarity around this issue, because the administration will be able to do a lot more damage by saying, well, look, there's all these people who are Native and they're not connected to any tribe. So these are just people claiming that. When in fact, the people who do claim, being an enrolled citizen, it's a really important aspect of acknowledging that you are a Native American with a different citizenship than somebody who is claiming it as ancestry. And it's not wrong for anyone to celebrate their ancestry. I mean, if you're French or Irish or Italian or Korean or Japanese, like, it's great that you want to celebrate your ancestry, right? But if you're Japanese and as an ancestry, it doesn't mean you're a Japanese citizen. So it's just a very big difference. So I want to break that up and just acknowledge that's a really important thing. And we need to be in a space where it's okay to celebrate a individual's race, but also be careful and understand that there's a huge difference in being a citizen of a tribe, citizen of a government, because our status is not race, it's political in nature. And we'll probably hear more about that as the administration moves along to do a lot of things. And it's always confusing, right? Because Native Americans, guess what? We didn't get the right to vote until 1924. So we weren't even recognized as citizens of the United States until that Indian Citizenship Act that gave us the ability to vote in our federal and state elections. So there is so much disinformation around it, and I just want to take a moment to recognize that. Again, I don't want to stop anybody from celebrating their ancestry. We should all want to celebrate our ancestry and know our own histories, but we have to be careful when it comes to saying that we're tribal. We have to acknowledge that there's a difference between somebody who is an enrolled citizen of their tribal government. The other thing that I want to say, and I was at a powwow this last Mother's Day weekend, and sometimes it's hard to be at powwows. It's enjoyable. We get to see people celebrating their connection to being Indigenous, and you don't have to be an enrolled member to participate in these events. But there's all of these myths that still exist out there. And so a young woman came up to me because I happened to be in the information booth, and she said, and if anyone is an enrolled citizen of their tribe, they're going to laugh at this with me. She said, can you help me? I'm Native American, and I really want to know more about the benefits that I get as being a Native American. Can you tell me what benefits there are? And I busted up. I mean, I didn't mean to be rude, but I laughed. I was like, I'm still looking for the benefits. I don't know what you. And I said, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude. It's just that if you're thinking like we get free education, somebody should have told my loans, the student loans I took out for $50,000, that someone should have told me that was supposed to be free, and they missed the memo. And so I said, it's just that's kind of a common question. There's this idea that being Native American, we get some sort of special privilege, or I don't know, benefits. I'm still looking for those benefits. But then I took it seriously and I said, okay, well, do you know your ancestry? And she says, yes, my mom's family is from Arizona. I'm like, okay, that's 21 other tribes. Okay, can we narrow it down? Like, do you know which tribe? And so I start naming off some of the tribes in Arizona, and she clicks to Apache. Well, I kind of had to stop there because there's several Apache tribes. And so I'm just like, you know what? Why don't you call San Carlos Apache? And talk to their enrollment office. If nothing else, they'll get a good laugh at that. But I don't know. And I think that's the other thing, is that we as Native people don't always know what other tribes' processes are. Like there's this idea that we're homogenized and we're one group of people and we all know. And we do not. And I can tell you that when I moved from Northern California, because I understood how tribes act in Northern California, and we have what we call representative governments, meaning we elect our elected leaders and they make decisions for us. And then I moved to Southern California, where they have the rule of democracy, rule of the mob, meaning that their tribes, any tribal member who's over the age of 18 has the ability to vote on an issue during their monthly meetings or bi-monthly meetings. And so it was a very different way of governance. And in Arizona, you're going to find the Tana-Aten people that have they're almost ran like a state legislative level, with districts that are similar to counties, I guess. So it's a very different process there. So all of us tribes have a very different way of governing ourselves, of determining who our citizens are, and how we move forward in the world. The other thing I want to say about climate change, sometimes it's mistaken that we have like some sort of special organ in our body that makes us connected to Mother Earth, and that we're all worried about the carbon that we're producing on a daily basis, or that we hate, we're all about recycling, or we're all about, doing what we can for Mother Earth. While that may be true for some, it's not always true, right? I had to drive 140 miles round trip to go to university when I went to university. And so, somebody said, "Oh, don't you just feel terrible about all the carbon that you're producing going, driving?" And I'm like, well, I never really thought about it until you mentioned it. So some tribes are very much into what's happening with the climate and are concerned about it. And other tribes are just emerging in that place, in that space, because they either haven't had the ability to really delve into it because they're still trying to deal with getting their basic needs met, getting healthcare, getting housing, getting, education. They're still worried about just the very basic things to not have to worry about like the larger climate change perspectives. They wanted me to talk a little bit about land back. Land back has, it's like it's a new term. Guess what? It is not a new term. Tribes have been fighting for the return of their Aboriginal territories since the reservations were first formed. They would, call us, I guess we were like escaped prisoners when we'd go outside the reservations to continue our traditional hunting, our traditional gathering. My grandmother could have been somebody who would easily arrested for arson because she, as a basket maker, knew that she needed to go and burn at certain times of the year so that the basket materials would be at their premium consistency and strength. And so, I remember being with my grandparents as my grandmother's going out and setting the fires, and we scurry off in his old Jeep Scout and let it go. And it was always done at the right time of year. It wasn't just done indiscriminately. It was done during the cooler fall months where the risk of a there's never, to my knowledge, a disastrous wildfire that was a result of that. That has been something that's come now. And, for example, Palisades fire, we know the devastation of that. That was a devastating fire. But at the same time, if anyone had been driving around in that area, which I happened to, all I saw was an uncared for space of land that was severely overgrown. And I knew that wildfire could be a possibility, right? and anyone who had been in that space could have probably easily detected that. But with land back, what's happened in most cases, for example, with Hoopa, Hoopa's had several instances of land being reconfirmed or reaffirmed as being belonging to the Hoopa tribe. So in 1988, there was something called the Hoopa-Yurok Settlement Act. 1988, the Hoopa-Yurok Settlement Act, which reaffirmed the Hoopa tribe's right to the 12-mile square. That's the boundary of our reservation, is a 12-mile square. And it reaffirmed the tribe's right for our authority and jurisdiction over lands within that 12-mile square. Then again, in 1996, we took a congressional act, carried it through Congress, and we received what we called the dogleg, the South Boundary Correction, meaning that when the federal government created the reservation boundaries, one of the guy's friends who was creating the 12 by 12 square, which was what it was always supposed to be, cut out what looked like a dog leg. That's why it's called the dog leg. Cut out what looks like an animal leg. And because their friend was a gold miner and they thought they had, there might be some mining opportunities, which actually ended up being completely erroneous. There was no gold. So in 1996, we corrected the South boundary by congressional act, and that was about 1,300 acres that was returned to the reservation proper. So it made our square an actual square. We always thought it was a square, but there was, unbeknownst to us, they had done some finagling back in the 1800s. So that was the third time that we had corrected land issues. Then most recently came an opportunity to return 10,000 acres of land through a purchase. And so a company that owned 10,000 acres along our border was put up that property for sale. That land was a part of our Aboriginal territory that we had never had access to since the reservation was created. We actually thought it was lost to us, and it contained one of our sacred mountains where our prayers and our medicine people would go. And so the land was put up for sale. We didn't know if we could do it, but with many agencies coming to the aid besides the state and their nature-based solutions funding, private foundations such as the Conservation Fund, the Nature Conservancy, the 11th Hour Project, numerous private philanthropic partners were engaged in raising $14 million. We had to raise $14.1 million. And it's really, it's really kind of sad that we had to raise that money. I mean, if there was some goodwill in the seller, maybe they should have just given it to us. But the seller was trying to get rid of it because they have a carbon project on it. And so they had got the biggest bang for their buck. They basically, are a Australian-based company. They bought this property. I don't know how long ago they bought the property, but they bought the property. They put a carbon project on it, have reaped all of the financial rewards, the big bonus rewards for that carbon project. And so they were ready to get out, kind of, they made their money. They're not making enough money, so they were willing to sell that property, and they did. They sold it to us at a fair market value price. But at the same time, it's a sad day when any tribe has to fight for their Aboriginal territory to be restored in at a cost that where money could have been used for other things like houses, those sorts of things. And so, my husband will talk about the Lakota people's battles with land back. We were lucky that nobody lived on the land, because in many situations where people are living on the Aboriginal territories of people, they are, you can't get that land back, right? You can't even get access to that. And it was really hard for my sons when they were working as cultural monitors to work for a tribe. In their mind, the tribe should buy every piece of land that has a cultural an area of cultural importance to it, but that's impossible to do. So it was hard for them to see cultural places, sacred places, having to either be destroyed or covered over for people to not use, because that was the only way to mitigate the cultural areas that belong to tribal people. So land back is a huge term now, but it's been something that every single tribe in the nation has desired for their people to have the return of their ancestral lands. And that can be a scary prospect. And it's a scary prospect because, as she just brought up the Ohlone people, can you imagine San Francisco Bay? Like, can you imagine the state giving up San Francisco Bay? No, that's going to be a heavy lift. They're not going to do any of that, because it's not so much now, but it used to be a concern that tribes would just get this property and put a economic development venture on it, and it wouldn't really be used for the same purposes. But at the same time, what we know and what history, anthropologists, archaeologists, all of those people who study these things, what they know is that the interaction between tribal people and the earth systems was very interconnected and interwoven. So many of our plants that we used for medicines and foods, there's such a long history of interaction between the tribal people and the plant people, I will say, themselves, that we both need each other. And some of our food items are becoming less than. Yesterday I've been out in, I'm down here in Southern California, and I've been out in the mountain regions, and I was like, we need to go pick that yucca out there. And they just looked at me like, what are you talking about? I'm like, can I go up there and pick it? And they're like, what do you want to pick it for? I said, because it's so delicious. It's a mixed taste between a honeydew melon and a cucumber. That's what I think the stalk tastes like. And it's so delicious. And you could do so many things with it. And we don't even begin to know how much our body, because our people have eaten these things for thousands of years. We don't even know what the real benefits of us going back to our traditional foods would be. There are theories, there's hypotheses that it would really change the rate of diabetes among Native people. But I think that would happen among all people of any kind of tribal group. Because for us, the brown people, the tribal people, going back to our traditional food groups has always been something that we have found to really make us more robust and healthier. In terms of climate justice issues, for example, the state right now, and I work a lot in this space, the zero emissions, going to zero emissions, and the state is kind of like, why aren't the tribes more engaged in accessing funds and looking at putting in charging stations in their reservations? And I'm like, the reason is simple. The infrastructure doesn't yet exist. That most tribal people live in rural areas. And so we still have a term that we all use, and we say, we go to town, right? We're going to go to town. And for us, that means driving 60 miles away to go and hunt for, at the Rite Aid store or the Costco, we hunt it for those best deals to find, but it's still a trip to town. It's not something that's close to us. And so I was talking to a gentleman who is, he's very middle income. His house is all solar. He's a tribal person. He owns a solar car or a electric vehicle. And he says, yeah, I've been doing this for a long time. And he said, so when I use my electric car to go to town, I know that I can just go to town and do one thing. If I'm going to do more than one thing, then I have to know where I'm going to try to charge first. And if that doesn't work, I have to find a place to charge second. And if that doesn't work, I do the third thing. And he goes, I have to know where 4 charging stations are closely together in order to be sure that I'm going to be able to do more than just one thing in town. So we're not right there yet. I had a big conversation with one of the tribes who said, well, they need to redo all of our power lines that come into the reservation because our power lines will not be able to even if we had the chargers built, they wouldn't be able to electrify the chargers. So these are like real life situations that are happening. And yes, we would love to be a part of the going to zero emissions, but reality comes in. We're not ready yet, and I think the state's having a hard time understanding that. And that's a part of disinformation in my mind, that the state's saying we're going to go to zero emissions, and we're going to do this by 2045, and yet we're not ready, right? And there's still so much work that needs to be done. And I think it's great to have those goals, but I also think that it's an issue. Like in East LA, they can't even get charging stations in East LA. What's in East LA? The mainly brown communities, right? Those disadvantaged communities. So people aren't, if you can't get it in East LA, good luck for the rural communities to do that. So hopefully I gave you some of the things to think about. I'm going to turn it over to my husband, and he's my personal motivator. And there's a funny story about that. But he really does. Even if I don't want to, I live the motivated life. So we're a good team.
Well, thank you so much, dear. And mitakiwe oyase pilamia tashunka kanwachakte. I just introduced myself and thanked the good people here for inviting not only myself, but Jill to share some of our perspectives regarding sovereignty, regarding what it is to be Native, Indigenous, American Indian, Native American, all these titles that we have. And well, if we're going with jokes, Jill didn't share that one, but I'll go with, a lot of people come up to me and go, hey, do you speak Indian? I go, I don't know. Do you speak European or do you speak Asian? I speak Lakota. Jill speaks Hoopa. Those are 2 distinct different languages. So we know a few of our words from our languages over the years of being married, but I had no clue about Hoopa language until I met Jill. So I had met other Hoopa people, and that was a way I got to meet her. I go, hey, I know Hoopa, and when I first met her at a conference, and then things happened from there, and here we are 30 years later, married and working together, not only in a professional sense, but as grandparents, as elders. We've been elders in training all this time, and now we're official. And we find out that elders don't have elders. And some of my perspectives as an Oglala-Lakota, I'm currently here in South Dakota doing some work with University of South Dakota Center for Disabilities. And I focus on disability work because of the public health disparities and some of the challenges that we have in Indian country in healthcare, education, poverty, and all of those type of things. And so when people say, oh, well, Indians have casinos, you're all rich now, how wonderful. Well, if France got a casino, and would they automatically share it with their European partners, their neighbors? That's something we want you to take away from this is the sovereign nations of who we are in what we now call the United States of America. So we are very unique as sovereign nations and have that sovereignty that we had to fight for, literally a 500-year war with the people that were coming over from Europe. Now, I don't have time to ask, I'll ask the question, where did Columbus land when he discovered America? Anyone want to just share real quick? I don't know if you can chat it, but for sake of time, Columbus never stepped foot in what is now America. He was just lost in the Caribbean. And what he so discovered was, the Honduras and Costa Rica, those islands, what we call now in the Caribbean. As a result of him thinking he was in India, he then deemed that area the West Indies as a result of being completely lost. So when we have Columbus Day, it's an interesting dynamic to celebrate Columbus Day when he's never even been in America, what we now know as America. I'm going to share a PowerPoint here. Let me see if it's available. There we go. This is why we're all here, for Mother Earth, right? Ina Maka. This is what we call in my language, Ina Maka is Mother Earth. And what are we doing now? What message is Mother Earth sharing with all of us two-leggeds now? What is she trying to scream right now that we're ignoring? So that's really an interesting dynamic of all of these things that, 500-year floods and fires and what we're dealing with now. And it's, literally called a hoax. So people are watching their homes burn or wash away in a flood, and they still think it's a hoax. So it's an interesting dynamic to have that misinformation, if you will, in terms of how can we address this from an indigenous perspective. Black Elk is a spiritual leader of our people, the Oglala-Lakota. You may know us as the Sioux Nation, the Great Sioux Nation, which is based off an Ojibwe French word. But we are the Oglala-Lakota of the Oceti-Sakowin, the Seven Council Fires. And Black Elk said, it is the story of all life that is holy. Us two-leggeds, us human beings, sharing with the four-legged brothers and sisters, the winged brothers and sisters of the air, and the green things. That's the root nation, is what we now, what we call our trees and our plants, as well as our river relatives. And for that to be all connected, we are all part of the Mother Earth and require Mother Earth for life. Yet we tend to be ignoring Mother Earth, unfortunately. And from a balanced perspective and a circular perspective, the medicine wheel, you may have heard, and this is something from my people, the medicine wheel philosophy. And it's not only just the flat circle, you need to think like Mother Earth dimensionally in a full circular aspect. But within that circle, you have the mental aspects, you have the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, and then as well as the seven values, the directions, and seven generations, we have that balance between those elements, those four human elements. And then the values of having that looking up and having that wisdom and the courage and fortitude and that generosity. And then when we look up, we're honoring the Creator. And then when we look down, we're respecting Ina Maka, Mother Earth, which leads to humility at the center of our circle as human beings, as well as Mother Earth. So that's part of the circle. We have our own Lakota star knowledge. Many of you are aware of the Greek star knowledge and I'm a Capricorn under Greek star knowledge. But here is our star knowledge and from the Lakota perspective, coming from our homelands near Pahasapa, the Black Hills. So there's some similarities when you superimpose these over each other in terms of the stars themselves, but obviously the stories and the connections are Lakota for us, more Greek for obviously the Greek interpretation. But when we think of Mother Earth and indigenous knowledge, our indigenous ways of knowing as Native people, Mother Earth is always within that circle, and how can we keep her balanced? And when you think of circular motion, you think of the star systems, once again, looking to the star people that we're part of. Mother Earth with the circular motions of storms, which are more frequent, obviously, now. And then our animal, our four-legged, here you see reindeer circling to protect themselves, a herd, as well as the fish, our water relatives, that also have circular format in terms of how they move and protect and serve as a tioshpe, a community. And then, of course, our DNA strands. All of us have DNA, and that's a constant circular motion. So again, it's not just a circle, it's all these circles like a spire. It's a truly an all-inclusive circular perspective that we as indigenous people have known for thousands and thousands of years. When you look at some of the indigenous examples here in America, as well as our indigenous examples in Europe with Stonehenge, those were circular aspects in line with the star knowledge and what Mother Earth is as an example. So when we think of balance in the circular movement, it is ever evolving and moving. So Enoch Macaw has those water relatives, as I mentioned, the root nation, that dirt, the minerals, the bugs that our kids need to be out there playing in so that they get that connection to Mother Earth, not only a connection with feel, but getting those minerals into our systems, into our bodies, utilizing dirt. The kids need to get out there and get dirty. And then our winged relatives are obviously having challenges with pollination and seeds and things of that nature. And then the four-legged, and I'm from the Buffalo Nation, and Jill hunts deer. So she has their four-legged. And then, of course, us as human beings. And then what are we going as the circle grows? What are we doing for our grandchildren? What are we doing 7 generations ahead? And that's the 7th generation philosophy. We must represent 7 generations ahead and 7 generations behind. And when you think of our children, our future generations, it's same as Mother Earth. Mother, obviously, you have the child, the family, extended family, what we call tioshpe in my language, of having those extended people that are part of a family unit, the community as well, and the tribe, if you will. And then, of course, Mother Earth and the next generation for Mother Earth. And what are we doing to protect that? Here's an example of some buffalo circling up when the coyotes or the wolves are trying to get to the elders or the children, the weak ones. The stronger ones get to the outside of that circle and protect those ones that are at risk. And when we think of marginalized or all of these terms that we have, why are we marginalized as Indian people? Who's marginalizing us? Why are we not naturally included in what we now know as America when we've been here for over 10,000 years, well over 10,000 years, and then European Americans have only been here for 500 years. So these are some of the resilience aspect and balance within not only Mother Earth, but within ourselves, as well as our family structure. All of this relates within that circular philosophy. And we're in it for the future generations. This is a famous painting. Some of you may have heard about the boarding schools and what they did to our young people, our children, when they were allowed to kidnap and steal our children, force them into boarding schools. Thousands of kids died in Canada and America. Some of you may remember that Pope Francis last year visited Canada to apologize for the boarding schools and the trauma and the death and what they did with the cultural genocide to those children. And then all those, now we have LIDAR and modern technology, we can see those unmarked graves and find those kids. And what they say here is it's showing a young one whispering into another young one's ear that are indigenous. And that small child's voice whispers, "They found us." And this is our grandchildren, Jill and I, 2 of them, Hazel and Cody. And we're in it to make it a better world for that generation so that they don't have to be dealing with those challenges that we're having out there. I had a movie clip, but I'll just show this part. If you watch the Super Bowl this year, these kids were featured in the Super Bowl. And so were featuring America, and they contacted me. They needed native footage, and I was able to share that with them. And I have a few more minutes, but I'm going to allow for some questions and answers. And then if we have time at the end, I can show my film clip. But the bottom line is we want you to realize that we are not a homogenized group. Like Asians, there's many different Asian languages and cultures and geography. Same with us as tribal members. I met a Hoopa, fell in love with the Hoopa. Now I know about Hoopa people. There's 590 some odd recognized tribes and over 200 tribes that are not recognized today. So that's a lot of different and diverse indigenous tribal nations that have a legal right to sovereignty within the Constitution. And a lot of fights are going to come up for Indian sovereignty as a result of this administration and the attacks that this administration is not only doing to indigenous people, but people with disabilities, people that need health care. And obviously, Mother Earth is not important to this current administration. So I'll stop there. And if there's some questions, we can answer some, hopefully. Palamia, Wopila, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill and Jim. You're always teaching me, both of you. And so I really appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Hopefully anybody who would like, please enter your questions in the chat and we will get to them. I have one question here to kick it off. And it's about, sorry about that, I'm in a large room. It has to be about Native Americans possibly losing their rights to citizenship. And is that misinformation, or is there a possible truth to Native Americans losing their citizenship in the United States?
Well, I'll take the first stab and let Jill follow up, but there are attempts, and this administration isn't the first administration that did not like indigenous people. We've been doing this with all the presidents in the history of the United States. For instance, Abraham Lincoln had the largest mass execution in the history of the United States. That was my relative tribe, the Dakota. 38 people were hanged at the same time. But that's not what Lincoln's known for. He's known for humanizing another group and continuing the genocide of us. So those are some of the challenges we have with the current administration trying to use old laws that they're bringing out from 200-300 years ago to see if they can eliminate tribal sovereignty. And Trump and the others in the administration want access to the 4% of land that we have left. America stole 96% of the land successfully. We have 4%, and they still want more. So that's something that Jill and I will always fight for, is sovereignty, and to ensure that no more land is taken when we're trying to literally get land back. So Jill, do you have a comment on that? Oh, did we lose?
Well, no. Sorry. I would say anything is possible with this administration, and the conversations comes about for the birthright citizenship. People born, if you're born here, you have a birthright, and it comes from that conversation, and then the various actions that it's taken to recognize tribal people as citizens of the United States. So it's kind of complicated, but it's happened before, and it will happen again.
What's fortunate is we're in the Constitution. We're mentioned 3 times as tribes, as American Indians in the Constitution. And fortunately, some of the new court justices are originalists and have actually ruled for us because of the Constitution. So we're going to play that card. Our tribal attorneys are ready. And 10% of Supreme Court cases are related to Indian country. That's why we need to have more awareness of who we are as indigenous people of sovereign nations. People go, "Oh, you're Indian. Oh, that's cool." And so, I love the Redskins, and that's what I always hear. It's just so ignorant, but, that's what we deal with every day as Indigenous people. But that ignorance is by design because American curriculum does not teach our fellow Americans the truth. And that's just a reality.
Thank you for those answers. I think, Alma, you have collected a couple of questions, so I'm gonna hand it to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jill. So getting back to the title of this program, Welcome to Our World, Disinformation, Misinformation, and Tribal Sovereignty, it was actually a good reminder that part of what Native communities have faced here is a 500-year disinformation campaign. And as climate activists, we face this around climate and around the many intersectional issues that climate is related to. So I was just curious, if there's any lessons or successes, or, I mean, you've shared a lot already, but if there's any that kind of come to mind as you think about how we can stay focused or what has been working, because there is a lot of discouragement out there in some of the climate circles. And just anything you have that might motivate us, I guess.
Well, I'll just start it with think like a tribal person. They tried to systematically kill us, the government. Maybe people don't know that originally, when the US government was dealing with tribal people, it was under the Department of War. And so that's our history, is that the Bureau of Indian Affairs came out of it being a Department of War, and the war, the genocide of Native peoples was purposeful and had every intention of destroying us, but it didn't happen. And I think for us as tribal people, we have been through the ringer. We've seen some dark times, but we just kept at it. And so, like that old saying, when if things get tough, the tough get going. We just keep forging ahead, because this is just a moment in time, and we can't let the moment in time overwhelm us. We have to be in it for the long haul. And it might not have been my grandparents or my great grandparents who, well, my great grandparents technically weren't citizens of the United States, but my grandparents became citizens. And so I think if we can take anything away, we're not talking in this moment, this now. This isn't for us. This is for our future. And that's why tribal people, I think, always think about the children and what's in the future. What we do today will have a lasting impact on them. And to just know that that's true, no matter what, that's the truth. And I think it's comforting when you come from a tribal place, because you grow up knowing that, right? You grow up in not having a sense of present time as much as those who came before us and those who are going to come after us, that we're just a blip, but our job is to prepare for tomorrow and for others to benefit from the work that we do today. So I think that's a real hopeful thing. Ken?
I'm going to use that line. Over 500 years of disinformation we've been dealing with. That was awesome. And so I'll credit you for it in my next speech. But, that is true, because people don't know who we are. Most Americans have been educated by John Wayne University. They only know us from that. They don't think of us as sovereign nations that have that legal right, that we're members of our nation as well as the United States. So we're dual citizens. But they still want to homogenize us as just one culture, one language, one type of person. We all have feathers, like Indian with the feather, and Jill's tribe doesn't use feathers. So again, that's just another aspect of what's frustrating for us as Indigenous people, is how ignorant by design Americans are towards us, because the curriculum that you learned, how could you know who we are with American curriculum? I'm fortunate to teach internationally, And I've taught Asian students and European students, and they know more about American history than Americans do in terms of us as Indian people. So that's an interesting dynamic that we have to go to other countries to experience a little bit more knowledge of who we are. And we're still teaching the, misinformation 500 years in our history books today. And even at the medical school level, some people think Columbus did actually land at Plymouth Rock or Florida or somewhere. It's amazing how many people don't know that. And, maybe some of you didn't know that tonight, that's so. Again, it's important to know the diversity of who we are. There's still 200 languages left in America, and Hoopa and Lakota are two of them. So thank you.
Okay, we have another question from the floor. There were some more questions about the recent Hoopa Valley land return purchase that happened. The specific question was, how long did it take to raise the millions to buy it back? And I think I would add a follow-up question, which is, in our climate justice programs, we've had a number of folks from different tribes talk about land back, and also what the role of those of us who are not Indigenous, who are visitors and settlers, can play to help spread the word and help it go better and advocate for programs that help with the land return endeavors.
So the process took about a year, and or maybe a year and a half. The conversation kind of was general, and then right at the 12-month before mark, it became a reality. And quite frankly, I was concerned that we wouldn't be able to raise the money. I was like, how are we committing to do this and not being, and yet we don't have any money to do this. And luckily, the conservation fund people, I don't know how long they've been doing this, but the original idea was that they were going to buy it. And, I'm not, I just need to be very transparent. So originally they said that they would buy it and they would give us a year to purchase the property from them, and they would help us raise the money. And then it became, no, you guys are going to have to raise the money. We can't make the purchase. So, right off the get-go, we were kind of disappointed. We felt a little discombobulated by that was not our understanding. But they did help us raise the money. Luckily, I'm a grant writer by trade. And so even though I was an elected official, I was able to jump on and start writing grants. And we did have people who knew us. And I think the big thing that people can do is, there's always somebody who knows somebody. And in the philanthropic world, less than 1%, I think it's like 0.01%, of philanthropic funding goes to Native American causes. And if anyone has dealt with any philanthropic efforts, they don't accept any kind of letters of inquiry. You have to be invited to apply to those funding streams. And so what I would say is, what somebody can do is, if they know somebody who's in the philanthropic world, that's where our voices need to be raised to a certain extent, so that we can get those access to those streams, be invited to apply. And luckily for us, Conservation Fund, because they are themselves a philanthropic group, they had connections and they were able to raise $5 million from an anonymous donor themselves. That's not something we could have ever done. We would never have been able to do that. We raised most of the remaining funds based off of California nature-based solutions and other funding streams to help with like closing costs and all of those sorts of things. So some of the other philanthropic interests came in at a much lesser amount, but we were able to raise the money.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, so it was like it was a total team effort.
Yeah, and that's something where Hoopa is very strong with self-governance, and we are treaty tribes in South Dakota. And so it's a different dynamic. And then there's so many different designations of tribal nations. So again, Indian 101 would be a whole degree, to be quite literal in terms of trying to understand who we are. But again, it's what we want you to take away is, we must be respected as tribal nations, as sovereign nations. And when you write your Congress people, just add a sentence, and oh, by the way, follow through with with your promises to Indian country, because they've broken every single one. So maybe one promise that they don't break would be one footstep, that would be a positive. So again, we need our allies, our non-Indian allies, as I say, because we've been doing it for 500 years. We need our non-Indian allies to also join us. So if you just do one or two sentences, oh, and by the way, follow through with your promises to Indian country, that'd be more than most senators here or Congress people in general. And when you think of 15 states do not have tribal nations. So that's 30 senators that have no influence whatsoever to vote for an Indian issue. So we really have to work hard to get those votes to support land back issues. So thank you.
Yeah, and I was just on a call earlier this week, and we were talking about letters, like where letters should go, and this just as a side note that we really need letters being sent from within red states. So if you have friends who live in Utah or Texas or Georgia or Alabama, Louisiana, like we need you to get your friends and family to write to the senators, because the senators have more stability in terms of elections than congressional reps do. So they were just saying, it might be a better bet we might not be able to stop things from passing the House, but we can potentially stop them at the Senate level.
We are coming close to our time together that's been scheduled. I would love for anybody who's willing to stay to give Jim a chance to screen your 5-minute clip. Sarah, Jim, or Jill, any last words before Jim screens his 5-minute clip?
Don't give up.
My positive ending to all of this is that Jim and Jill are here. Their tribes are here. Many tribes are still here. From a personal point, I get to work with you all, and that is a fantastic experience. And tonight, you all got to learn from all of them and take their information to heart and do what they ask you to do.
Well, Palamia, and that's thank you in my language, for joining us and having an interest in who we are as Indigenous people. So we appreciate that, most definitely.
Thank
you.
Thank you. And Jill, Jim, feel free to share your screen and show us your clip.
Okay, and I'm a filmmaker, and I've been fortunate to get some Emmy nominations. I'm hoping the Super Bowl piece gets me my first Emmy, but this is a piece from My Native America, which is a documentary that I hope will be turned into a weekly episodic television show where I can literally res hop and tell our contemporary stories from our lens, kind of in a travel exploration show format. So I will share my screen, and hopefully you'll be able to see that. Lamia washtelo mitakyueo yase. There can never be peace between nations until it is first known that true peace is within the souls of men.
Greetings, this is Jim Warne, and welcome to My Native America.
Long before the story of Columbus, indigenous peoples were native to these North American lands of Inamaka, Mother Earth. The sovereignty of our nations is principal to our struggle, and it is our hope to one day coexist with our non-native brothers and sisters in shared history and understanding. This will allow us to move forward together in a good way. This is our story. Hi, I'm Jim Warne. My Oglala-Lakota name is Tushunka Akawachakte. I played football at Arizona State University, and I was drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm a proud American, but I'm also a proud Oglala-Lakota. The strength of our people is with these challenges, with being ignored in the American system, that we are able to still be here today and have our languages and our culture and our perspectives intact. And that's what I want for the next generation. And we can guarantee that together if more of us work together to do that. But I also see the beauty of the culture that keeps us resilient. So imagine living with these challenges every day, but still being able to continue forward in a good way. On our journey, we'll be exploring 4 distinct tribal nations. From Ipe Nation in the coastal Southwest to the 6 nations of Seneca in New York and Canada, across the Great Plains to Oglala-Lakota, my people of the Black Hills, and on over to Hoopa and Redwood Country. We'll be exploring the culture, distinct ceremonies, and our indigenous ways of life throughout this great country. From the Lakota perspective, many tribes have the 7th generation philosophy. And Black Elk was one of our spiritual leaders that taught us the 7th generation philosophy. And after Wounded Knee, when he saw that horrible massacre and the result of that day, he said it would take 7 generations to heal our circle. And that's now the kids of today. The young ones that still speak their language, the young ones that are proud to be Native, those are the ones he was thinking about. And it's wonderful to be here and alive today in this generation so that I can do my small part to help the next generation achieve that inclusion and American dream.
That's what keeps it strong, is when they know who they are and where they come from, and they can connect and feel like they belong somewhere, you know. And these are our songs, and this is our dance, and you know, these are our traditional hand games. And
all they see is the feathers, the teepees, the things that quote unquote Hollywood or that mainstream media has put upon us. And today we're called something else or other.
I believe that many of the health disparities that we have, including the behavioral illnesses and conditions, are from having lost our identity through government policies in the past. I think it's time in America that people will be willing to hear some of these hard truths, but as a result, we can move forward together. And I'm hoping whatever we can do collectively with my non-Indian brothers and sisters is we need you to walk with us. And if we do this together, we can make a difference and change things for future generations, not only for our Native youth, but for all of our young people. As Sitting Bull said, let us put our minds together and see what life we can make for our children. So thank you for allowing me to share that, and I won't do the credits here, but again, I'm hoping that turns into a weekly show on CNN. Who knows? I'll be like Eva Longoria, Finding Spain.
Jim, there was actually a question about that clip, which was, is there anything we could do to support to get it greenlit in those streaming services?
Yeah, please contact me because I'm looking for letters of support from a variety of different groups. And I'm meeting with South Dakota PBS to hopefully pitch it on a national PBS show, or at least regional, or get streaming. My young people always say, you got to stream, stop thinking television. So but I'm an old guy, so I think TV. But please email me and it's warriorfoundation@gmail.com. So Warrior Foundation, all lowercase, one word, @gmail.com. And I will be doing some other announcements on trying to raise funds or get interest in this program. And we've been fortunate in the documentary format, which is essentially an hour pitch piece, but we've won 7 awards throughout the world, Greece, Mexico, and America. So, and we'll be in New York City next week to showcase our film at the People's Film Festival. So it's nice that it's getting attention as a piece. I did mostly with my cell phone, but I had fortunate other clips that I was able to add in with my other productions. But go to gen7films.com and you'll be able to see my films, and I guarantee you're going to learn something that you were not taught in American curriculum.
So Gen7 with the number 7 films.com.
Perfect.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our time together. Thank you again, Jill and Jim, for your time and all the work you're doing and for being willing to talk to us. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah, you're able to come back on screen. Sarah has another event that she's doing with Native Hawaiians where she is. And thank you, Climate Reality. Thank you, Kevin, for helping us with the events. And thank you, Siri, my co-chair for climate justice, and everyone for all of your work and your dedication and your willingness to listen.